So I wanted to put together a training video on how I train my dog's weave poles. And the goal of this video is to help everybody kind of have a grasp and an idea before you come back to classes after we have our couple-week break. So I want you to be able to go home, have some homework to work on, things to work towards, so that we can get those weave poles closed up, done, out of the way. Training weave poles is one of my least favorite things to do, so it's good to just kind of buckle down and get it done. I always tell everybody you can usually get it done within 2 weeks. However, I like to elongate it through a month. In classes, we'll play around with the channel poles, but at home, I'd like you to be able to work 2x2s. So the 2x2s are great for training entrances, training independence, and really training the understanding of what the dog is doing. My 2x2s are all different. If you look at my poles, these don't have tape on them. These have different tape on them. They have, these are 4, these are 2. You have one that's a solid painted pole. Giving the dog different poles is really good for your training, okay? Different bases as well are important. I want the dogs to see different amounts of feet, different feet. Obviously, we have what we have to train on, but as you progress in your dog's training, it's really good to have the ability to introduce them to all kinds of different things in their poles. Okay, so I have my one set of 2x2s, and that's what I'm going to start with, just one set of the 2 poles. I'm going to draw my reinforcement line down the center of my poles. And that's where all reinforcement's going to happen. So whether I'm throwing a toy, I'm throwing a cookie, I want that cookie or toy to get thrown on that reinforcement line. I'm not feeding from my hand because that teaches the dogs to look up at your hands while they're weaving. I'm teaching them to drive forward in the poles. All reinforcement gets tossed on the reinforcement line. All my dog has to do is walk through these 2 poles to get reinforced. Personally, I like to use a clicker. If you're not comfortable using a clicker, you want to use a marker word, okay? So as my dog shows interest in going through these 2 poles, and I'm standing here, they show any interest in these poles, I'm going to click and toss my reinforcement on the reinforcement line. I am not going to reinforce them for turning around and coming back through the poles because that's teaching the dog to back weave, okay? I'm only reinforcing them for going through the poles one direction. I'm going to do this on both sides of my body. So now my dog's on my right. Same thing, dog goes through the poles, shows interest in the poles, anything to do with the poles. Click, throw my reinforcement on my reinforcement line. What starts happening then is as you build up, you're only clicking for the dog running between the poles. What I want to make sure of is at this stage, I am working all the different angles, different motion, and different distance to these poles. So just these 2, I'm making sure my dog can find the entrance and go through and get reinforced. Or my dog can find the entrance, go through and get reinforced, or from behind, as well as they can do this here, or they can do it with me running with them, or they can do it with me ahead, asking them to do this. I don't want my motion to affect my dog's performance, and I don't want the angles that they're being presented to affect their performance either. So my dog has a great success rate now. They're running through the one set of 2x2s with confidence, driving forward, always going to their line to get reinforced, not paying from hand. I'm not using my body to get them to go through. I'm now going to add my second set of poles. This is where I'm a little less calculated in my training. I can't tell you exactly how far apart I have these. However, if a dog is struggling to see the second set, I will move set 2 closer, so I'll put the 2 sets closer than I will for a dog that's comfortable. Obviously then, once the dog is comfortable with it, I would say I have them about 8 feet apart between the 2 sets. So what I'll do is my reward line is still straight down the center of these poles. I'll put my second set out, so now I have 2 sets of wide open poles, and all the dog has to do is run through the 2 sets to get reinforced on the line. So, I have my dog here, ready, steady, dog goes through the pole. He's gonna go through pole 1, because he's gonna go, oh look, weave poles. He's gonna go through, I'm gonna click it, reinforce in the center, step up, and then what's gonna hopefully happen is he's gonna look up after eating his cookie and go, another set of weave poles, and go through the second set, and then I can reinforce the second set. What starts happening then is I start backing off of helping with my motion of stepping up. Okay, so instead of me stepping in here to help, I just hang out back here, and now he's driving through the 2, okay? And what I can do then is I can separate them a little bit. So when I said that if the dog is struggling, I'll put them closer, I mean like I'll put these poles actually closer together so they have less opportunity to not see the other set. When I'm working this, at least at first, I want to intermittently reinforce pole set 1. If I don't reinforce set 1, the really smart dogs, they do this. That doesn't get paid. They skip it and then they come through the second set. It's really funny, but it's also not funny when you're training. But I can tell you almost every single one of my dogs has tried to pull that one. So you do have to continue to reinforce set 1 just for a little bit and intermittently, okay? The dog's doing well running through both of these. I want to make sure, again, I work around my clock so my dog can find the entry. If I'm here, he'll go in, go down his line, reinforcement always on that line that goes down the center. If I'm here, he can come around, find the entrance, work down the line. If I'm just standing here, he'll run down. If I'm running next to him, he'll move down. If I'm moving next to him and turn and go the other way, he'll continue forward. I don't want my dog concerned about my motion in a set of weave poles. The next step for getting the dog to weave is actually it's the easiest. As long as you continue moving along in small increments instead of making this too fast of a transition for the dog. So what you're going to do is, this is where the reinforcement line, at least for me, is really important, because you're going to want to make sure that reinforcement line is still moving down the center of the poles no matter how much I move them. So what's going to happen is the left pole is going to come in towards you, and the right pole is going to push away from you. So as I come here, I'm going to tilt these poles just a little bit. My reinforcement line's still down the center. And I'm going to do it with this one as well. And I'm going to work the same exercises. Dog through, dog through, dog through. All different angles, getting reinforced on the line. Great, dog's doing well. I'll move my poles a little bit again. Same exercise. Dog through, dog through, dog through. Getting reinforced. This is fun. This is valuable for the dog. Move my poles again. Same exercise. This is fun. Move my poles again. What's going to happen is this is going to continue to move in small increments until you have 2 straight sets of poles, okay? Everybody knows the left shoulder always enters the weave poles first. It's really important that you make sure you're turning these, left pole coming in, right pole pushing away, or else you're going to teach them to enter with the wrong shoulder. So now my weave poles are straight on my reward line. That's why the reward line is so important, because it teaches the dog to look forward through the poles from the very beginning. And this is what's going to help you get that nice straight set of poles. Okay, a little bit. There we go. So now my weave poles are straight. What's happening now, because of how slowly I've moved it, my dog is actually weaving. Just obviously have a ginormous gap between the 2. So what's going to happen then is I'm going to move these closer. Same exercise, same exercise. Both sides of my body. Move this closer. Repetition. Repetition is key in weave pull training. Okay? Until I've repeated it, slowly, slowly, slowly gotten myself to having 4 pulls. Okay? Dog is weaving 4 pulls. Great. That's when I bring in my last set. So what happens with my last set is I will put it onto my pulls and then I open it. A lot of dogs will weave the 4, see the last set, and just duck right in, and you can reinforce again on this reinforcement line that's straight. However, most of my dogs that I've worked, I've had to move it out a little bit, work this, then I'll move it back in, and then it can be put in line, okay? So that's how you work up to 6 pulls. This is something that can be accomplished, again, this can be accomplished very quickly. I recommend that you slow down the learning just a little bit, and by that I mean make sure that the dog is proofed to all of your motion, proofed to all of those entries from the beginning, because I think for the dog there's nothing more unfair than teaching them to weave 6 straight pulls and then going, oh, by the way, sometimes I run next to you, sometimes I expect you to find hard entries, and sometimes I'm going to be moving off laterally. If I start that from the beginning, my dog never knows any different. So I want to make sure that I am proofing everything right from the get-go. This should give you some homework, some things to think about, and hopefully when we come back, we'll be able to finish up those weave pull performances.